complex sound still is white noise.
All right, I think we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, let me thank you all for joining us today in this new forum setting. After it was announced last night that we wouldn't be able to host the event in person, obviously we're incredibly disappointed that we're not able to meet face-to-face to celebrate the work of these amazing women. But I'm pleased we can still continue the event online, which, given what we're talking about today, is actually a more appropriate way to do it anyway. So thank you so much for joining us. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all of the lands that we're meeting on, because we're all in different places today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they've made to our lives, to the cities that we're in, and to our country. Today's event was curated to provide anyone interested in or currently developing a career in creating screen content for web distribution. And I am absolutely thrilled and delighted to be sharing the screen with these amazing, amazing women. Producer, writer, actor Beck Bignall. Thank you so much, Beck, for being with us. Producer Hannah Neal, who's here from Sydney. Hey, Hannah, thanks for being with us all the way from Sydney. Writer and director Kelly Cross. Producer Melissa Kelly. Writer and director Miley Tunnicliffe, and producer and writer Shakara Wally. Thank you all so much for being with us. And a quick note for the audience: if you've got a question, you can ask at any time by sharing it in the comments section on the stream. And through the magic of technology, it will get to me, and hopefully I will be able to relate it to our panel. So let's get started, and I think the best way to do it would be to ask each one of our lovely ladies if they could provide us with just a bit of background about your sort of journeys to today, how you got started in web, maybe, and a bit about the kind of work you've been doing. Beck, perhaps we'll start with you, and I'll just let you know that you're on mute, so make sure you unmute before you start. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and a big congratulations for turning this around so quickly to all of the organisers. Such a good job. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country I'm on. I'm currently in Kojonup. The Noongar people of Kojonup are very good friends of mine, and there's many people involved in the series that I'll talk to later. I'm from Kojonup, and I love web because I sort of always felt like I was a bit on the back foot coming from the bush, trying to get out in front in film and TV. So I sort of went from here to Sydney to learn and work and that sort of thing. Worked with the ABC over there, and then decided to go out on my own. I created a series with two mates who were fellow actors called 600 Bottles of Wine that was really fun. It premiered on BBC in the UK and then has been picked up all over the world. So that's been a lot of fun and sort of threw us into the web space quite quickly. Created and associate produced a series called Visible Farmer, which showcases all the ladies of the land, which is a great project. Then I created Homespun, which I'll talk to more later, in my community of Kojonup here in the Great Southern. And we've just finished producing something with Arena Media in Sydney called The 5 Minute Call, which is heading into post-production now. I also just worked on Blueback earlier this year, and I'm very excited to be involved in the panel, so thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Melissa, why don't you share with us a little bit about your journey from more traditional filmmaking to web series creator, content extraordinaire?
Sure. So I'm a producer, and I also own a company called Factor 30 Films, which is based in South Fremantle. I've been working in the film and television industry for about 25 years, so I'm probably the oldest filmmaker in the room.
I'm going to give you a run for your money on that
one. When I started, we certainly weren't commissioning. I didn't work in the web until 2017. So when I started, I predominantly worked in television production. and I started out in documentary, moved into children's TV. I then moved to Sydney, and I really cut my teeth in television on comedy and drama, and I worked for Steve Vizard's company, which he owned with Andrew Knight, and that company was called Artist Services, and they had a output deal with the Comedy Channel. So for nearly 3 years, I predominantly worked on comedy projects. And in a strange way, that sort of working in cable TV at that time, I feel as though it did give me a really good grounding for what we now call digital series. So after working in television, I did also work in feature films. And I've produced 3 feature films. Most recently, I Met a Girl, but before that, Hounds of Love and Blame. And now I've got a slate of projects that I develop. I love working with new and talented filmmakers. I've worked on Aussie Rangers with Shakara and Kelly, and I've recently worked with Hannah on Iggy and Ace.
Fantastic. So that's a great segue to Hannah on Iggy and Ace. Hannah, you want to tell us a little bit about your how you got to be here today?
Hello, everyone.
The abridged version.
My name is Hannah. I'm maybe the newest of the group to the film industry. I graduated from the Screen Academy a couple of years ago, where we did our sort of first web series project as like a unit, which was a very odd thing, I think, at the time for me. And then I have had a couple of shorts funded by Screen West, which has been very nice. Most notably, I think Tribunal, which was also with SBS, which is what got us into the Digital Originals Initiative, I believe, to get Iggy and Ace up, which is what I'm here to talk about today. And I have another web series that was meant to go into production in Sydney this week. We would have finished shooting, but because of the lockdown, we're delayed. And I've got a small slate that's happening, and there's lots going on. And it's a really exciting time to be an emerging, I think, producer in the digital space. So I owe my whole career to online, really, I think. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Shakara and Kelly, we'll go to you now. And since you're both on screen, I'll let you decide who wants to talk first.
We're both just pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah. All right. Hello. My name's Kelly Cross. I've been doing the filmmaking kind of thing for a long time now. I only had 3 babies when I started, and I've got 4 now, and they're all big teenagers. I was going to say something else then. Aussie Rangers was my first kind of web series, and the only one I've done since then. Yeah. So I do a lot of short dramas and stuff like that, and documentaries. We actually worked on Footy Magic. That was fun. Chasing after footballers. We actually met one from Coaching, didn't we? The best one. Stephen Michael.
Yes.
Duh. Yes. And been lucky enough to do like a bit of television and that since then. Worked on The Heights. Both the seasons and that, and just trying to do bigger things, while I can, when I can.
Fantastic.
Yeah. My story's a little bit different. So I started off in theatre, and I was working in theatre for about 10 years, and
I did too.
Okay.
But that was a long time ago. Sorry.
And I kind of learnt producing and writing and directing. And then I got this amazing opportunity to do Indigenous Producers Initiative through Screen Australia. And then through that initiative, got to work on a few film sets, a few movies. And then this initiative for Aussie Rangers came up through ABC. And we got to work with Melissa, who was our series producer on that. and then that kind of opened the door then to do the Noongar Footy Magic documentaries, where I worked with Kelly and Harry Bardwell, who was our executive producer with Beyond Films. But yeah, from that just got to do a whole bunch of other TV series and working on other web series and writing and other stuff.
Fantastic. Miley, that just leaves you. Give us a little bit about your experience and how you've been working in the web and across other platforms as well.
Hello, everyone. So my background, I started off as an actor, and I was pretty immersed in that world, mostly theatre, for about 10 years before I started transitioning over to writing. And I made a few short films as a writer and a producer. I'm glad to hand the producing back to far more talented people to take over now. I started directing as well, and Calling was the first web series that I did, and I think I'd only directed one thing before that, but it was the first comedy that I directed, and that was the first bit of funding I had as a director as well. And that was funded through Screen West, and that was a very short web series, which we've also doubled up as a short film that did amazing things to help promote my career. And then we later did Molly and Cara, which was commissioned through SBS through the same initiative that Hannah's Tribunal was selected for. And they've been the two web series that we've done so far. And that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. I think we should get to some questions now. And as I said, I've got a list and we've got clips to show. But for you audience, I'll just out there in Zoom land, I'll just remind you that if you've got questions, put them in and we'll get to them as we go along. So I guess the first question, and we were talking a little bit about this before we went live, about how the landscape for web series has changed over the last few years as you, our practitioners, have been involved with it. Shakar and Kelly, maybe we'll start with you and then maybe hear from Melissa, just about sort of where you're seeing the difference between where it was you started and what it was like when you got started and what it's like now in your work.
Yeah, so I remember attending a SPA meeting, which is the Screen Producers Australia meeting, where we were having this discussion about what is online, and it was kind of emerging and brand new. And as emerging producers back then, we kind of we didn't know what it was going to be like. And then a few years later, we got this amazing opportunity to do Aussie Rangers through ABC. And I guess fast forward to now, it's kind of a regular thing, I guess, with web series. It's kind of taken over, I guess, not taken over, but it's a different avenue to the traditional way of making film or getting your films out there.
Yeah, like when I started, you'd make your short film, it'd do the rounds of the festival circuits, you know, and hopefully do really well, and then that'd give you the buzz to get more work and stuff. Whereas this kind of put it on a really quick trajectory.
I think, like I was saying before, YouTube Originals is actually a really good example of that. Cobra Kai. I remember when that was like season 1 hit YouTube Originals, and I was telling everyone about it, and then all of a sudden it hit Netflix. So, I think it's just another great avenue, I guess, for content to be shown in just a different way.
Much more accessible.
Much more accessible, and I think there's so much out there as well. I remember I was doing an internship at one of the companies, and that was just my job, was just watching a web series and researching the different types and stuff, and then having to come up with my own content. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Melissa, have you seen a big difference from when you sort of first jumped into this to now in terms of content or availability or audience interest or interest in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started out in the film industry, as Kelly mentioned, the idea was to do a short film, build up your credits, hope that the short does do well either locally on a film festival circuit or internationally, and create the buzz, as Kelly described, which is strong enough in order to get either the next short film up or more of a longer form project up, being a feature film ideally. And then once you've proved yourself in longer form as a feature film, then your door would hopefully open to anything. And whether that was television or more features, but suddenly you've proved yourself. And I think that now that's all been broken apart. That old traditional way of doing, those steps is now much more relaxed, and that doing a web series can give you great opportunity. You can go from a web series moving straight into television. I wouldn't say you could necessarily have a career in doing short form. I don't know that there's enough revenue from doing web series. And I'd love somebody else to say that there is, but I'm not, I haven't experienced that. But certainly now, from Aussie Rangers, which was done in 2017, to Iggy and Ace, which we just produced this year, the difference is, even in that short time, is that SBS, for example, have a commissioning stream, which is digital originals. And when we did Aussie Rangers, it was an opportunity for a project to go on ABC iView, but even before it went on iView, it was going to be on what they had originally wanted to be an ABC Indigenous YouTube channel. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember we had talks about it, and then I think they just decided for it to go solely on iView.
Yeah. So when that project was in its early stages of being commissioned, it was going to be commissioned for YouTube. So anyway, it ended up on iView, which is absolutely fantastic. And, I am seeing a big shift from going down a traditional pathway to more and more opportunities in short form without having to have a great success at the Cannes Film Festival in order to break into the industry.
Yeah, fantastic. So the with this massive growth then in this landscape, the landscape is bigger, the platforms are everywhere. There is always going to be the pressure to have your series, your story stand out, find an audience. And I guess one of the questions that's always on people's mind is what kind of ideas make a good web series? You all have been in that fight for a bit, in that struggle. And so I guess in asking that question, part of the question are there things that are more suited to web series than they would be to regular television or to broadcast or streaming or to short film? Maybe Miley, do you want to start off and tell us if you've got a thought about what kind of ideas make a good web series?
Yeah, much simpler ones, I find. My strategy has always been to show something I can do and just try and do it well and not get too complicated in the short form. So, yeah, I mean, with Calling, I just had this idea, which I'd lifted out of a longer series I was writing, was just this relationship between a mother and daughter who only ever talk to each other on the phone. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do a web series about that and like make that still feel visual and still feel connected. So that was just the simple idea of phone calls between a mother and a daughter. And yeah, I guess my strategy has always been, if you can do it really well in the short film, then people might give you a chance to do it in a longer form.
Beck and Hannah, thoughts about what kind of ideas make for a good web series?
The thing that I love about web is that it democratized audience. So the difference between linear, like traditional programming, and web is that it's a two-way relationship with the audience, as opposed to projecting an idea at an audience and just expecting them to like it and hoping that they like it, crossing your fingers. I think things like Starting From Now, which was one of the very earliest web series that was super successful, proves why they're so amazing, because it was providing content for an audience that were like severely underserviced and not represented. And so I think the ideas for web series, there has to be clarity on the gap in the audience, because there's just so much the audience is fragmented. There's so much content, so many platforms. I always sort of look at what audience is underrepresented, and then I sort of like to work back from there. And I'll do things as well, like with all of the stuff I've created, I'll find sort of an existing audience and where they are, and I'll try to move them towards, like, I'll know where I can discover them before I make the thing. So I sort of work backwards from that point out so that I can make sure that it's discoverable, because I'm not really making web series to, like, I love making web series. That's like a big part of our, like, what we do for our, business across the board. So for me, I'm not going the industry route. I sort of want to make sure that the brand that I'm creating, the world that I'm creating, is very true to the audience that I'm creating it for, which means that often it probably wouldn't get the the validation of the industry at a festival or things like that, because it's very specifically designed, brand, release strategy, all of that stuff for a very niche audience. So for me, ideas are always, they have to be very authentic to the audience, the niche audience I'm creating it for.
Fantastic. Hannah, do you want to finish up and talk about what you think is good for a web series, ideas good for a web series?
I think what Beck said was really right. I think, like, if you know what you want to make and then find that sort of authentic audience, like if your project is like particularly diverse or niche, that there is a place for it online. So I think just making sure that you're not taking a TV show and trying to turn it into a web series as well is really important. Just whatever story you're trying to tell is considered for that format.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a clip. Now this one's from Aussie Rangers. Shakar and Kelly, you're up. And I think what we'll do is have you set up the clip, and then we'll run it, and then I've got a question to follow up with that. So over to you.
This is towards the end of the series where Wally, who's the main character, he's kind of lost everything and is gone walkabout in the bush. He's trying to find an elusive creature, a quokkacoot. So it's kind of his redemption, I guess, in his clip. Yeah, where he finds himself, so to speak.
Yeah, he's coming to Jesus.
Yes, coming to Jesus one. I don't know. We'll let you guys see how you go.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's run the clip.
Gotcha. Oh, it's true. I've wasted my whole life chasing a lie. I'm a fraud and I've lost everything I've ever loved because of it. Well, no more. I'm going to do something I should have done at least a week ago.
So the tours could run all day and tourists from around the world could try it from their living rooms. So the best part are the headsets. You know, they go on your head and then they're set. Yeah.
What? This is excellent. Did you come up with it by yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, this is amazing. Oh, amazing. It feels just like a real Jew guide wearing a hoodie.
There you go.
Right. I think I've seen more than enough. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. So character development. How does it work in a web series compared to other formats? Would you say?
It's a lot quicker. Very fast-paced, I guess. I think with longer format, especially, with longer format, at least you have time to develop these characters. But I think we found with Aussie Rangers, because we only had 5 episodes and they were only averaging between 5 to 8 minutes, we kind of had to quickly, develop these characters. But not too much where they change completely, just enough to kind of tease the audience.
Yeah. I think when it's obvious, like you can see in the beginning, like with such strong characters, where the arcs, with each character, like with Wally, he's obviously very full of himself and
humble bragger.
Yes, and he got humbled, and it was very easy to do that with him, with someone like him, just putting in that little bit of extra pressure from the ex and the rest, and it makes it easier, I guess.
So if the character development works a bit faster, and so does that sort of also fall over into the sort of the story structure as you would think about it in terms of a series? Do you, and this is for everyone, the structure of web series, I think people talk a lot about the fact that you don't have the same kind of, people are quicker to click away than they are if they're necessarily watching television. So what kind of challenges have you seen in terms of structuring your storytelling for a web series versus something a bit more traditional broadcast or other formats? Who would like to start? It's a big question, but I think it's important because this is where people are going. This is where people are gonna have to get their bread and butter.
Well, I think for us with Aussie Rangers, we kind of wanted it to be linear. So we followed them at the beginning of the problem to the end of the problem solution. So we kind of went that kind of route so we could see the character development in it. And that's kind of how I like to write as well.
I think it's much easier if it's as simple as
we tried to keep it simple.
possible. Yeah. Especially when you have so many characters as well, as opposed to just like, one or two that are really against each other.
Right. Anybody else want to jump in terms of structure for a story in a web series format? I think if we were sitting on a stage together, there'd probably be easier to do a bit more back and forth, wouldn't it? Beck, you want to jump in?
Yeah, we've been throwing stuff up against a wall with web series and trying new stuff from a structural point of view, because I love that the way that we watch things on digital is quite different, and we're seeing that with new formats, like even like Schitt's Creek at a 22-minute format, which was hugely popular and stuff like that. There is opportunity for us to see if there is interest from the audience in kind of more cyclical models of stories. And so certainly in Homespun, we've really experimented with what that looks like. We've intersected animation. The 7th episode is quite different to all the episodes prior. And that's all been really strategic, built from, again, like knowing that audience and what they're kind of like expectations might be, but it's been really fun to see how that that difference can actually, I guess, where we look at the connection and the engagement, it comes down to micro moments, which is something that we're seeing a lot of popularity on platforms like TikTok and a lot of those platforms that do influence web series. So we're really interested in trying some new things, which is what I love about web as well, is that there's no rule book really, because it's there's a lot of different structures, a lot of different ways. Like, it's still, I think, finding itself as a format. So it's still a great time to experiment with those things that are quite different.
Micro moments. What a telling description. That's fantastic. So you mentioned length of episodes, and I might just go into this next question, Miley, which is for you in terms of how you determine the length of your episodes, and is that determined by sort of where you see the product going? And we've got a trailer, I think, from Calling. Is that correct? To show the audience. Do you want to see that first, and then talk about how you sort of figure out what you're doing based on what platform? Or
yeah. Let's have a look at the trailer.
Okay, we'll have a look at the trailer first, and then Miley will talk to us a bit.
It's nice your mum still calls. Mine died when I was 12. So.
Lucky you.
It's an emergency. I need you to go out the front.
Are you okay?
No, I've accidentally sent my Uber Eats to you.
I made a list of all the things that I hate about myself, and I realised I got them all from you. It's clearly been passed on through the DNA or something.
Oh, do you always have to use that tone with me?
I don't have a tone. I'm just...
Hello? Is that Sam?
Does he cheat on you again?
Just stay out of my life!
Guess what I did today all by myself?
You figured out Facebook?
Yes! Sam. Sushi. Sashimi.
So, all right, Miley, so we were talking about the length of episodes and how that interplays with the platform. And I think that it really is it's a fascinating question about how the delivery platform really influences the shape and format of what your content is.
Yeah, so with Calling, I had no idea about the world of web series and like how to market it or where to go with it. So we were doing a lot of guessing at that stage. And what I did have in mind, like I was coming at it from a writer director point of view. I wanted to be able to show that I could do individual episodes within a story arc over a series. And so the episodes are 2 to 3 minutes each, and there's 5 episodes. And what I had in mind was that, because we didn't even know if we'd get funding at that stage, and we didn't know if we'd get a distributor or a platform. So we thought we'll end up just putting it on YouTube. So we wanted really short, sharp, bite-sized, that's what we call them, bite-sized episodes that could hopefully keep people's attention for that really short amount of time. And there's a couple at least I was hoping that would maybe, be shareable and be passed around and get attention that way. Because, there's so many people making web series, it's hard to get above the noise of it all. So what ended up happening, that slightly backfired on us. When we did it, and it ended up having some successes at festivals, and we got some awards for it, and then we thought, okay, well let's try and see if we can get this on ABC or an SBS. And the problem that we ran into was that they were way too short to put online. So yeah, it was kind of like we had some interest from ABC at one stage, but they were just like, we don't know what to do with this. It's too short. So that was a bit of a lesson in terms of if you're going for a more established platform to put it on, it is better to go for the longer episodes. Whereas I still think, and we haven't put it on YouTube yet, but I still think if I was going straight to YouTube, I would have done the same thing and kept them short. What ended up happening was, in a roundabout way, we ended up getting it on SBS anyhow through Flickerfest, who selected it as part of they had 30 years of Flickerfest films, and they put them up on SBS as well. So that worked out well. So that was just our strategy from that end. And then when we did Molinkara, that was commissioned from the script to go on, and they gave us leeway to say how long we wanted our episodes to be. So I thought 5 minutes would be a good amount of time for that story each. So that's what we went for with that.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the development process, working with the broadcaster and your experiences. I'm really fascinated to hear how it went for you. This would have been interesting.
So on the 2 web series that I've worked on, both have been commissioned by broadcasters. And in my experience with both of those series is that your broadcaster, they are the masters and the experts in their audience. So they have commissioned the projects quite specifically because they know it's going to meet their target audience, or they have commissioned it because it's going to provide a greater reach to their audience. So during the development process, they are guiding you in that way, and they are also providing you with additional guidance, not just on the development of the story, but then also when you move into casting and other areas, they're able to give you some feedback on who will also best serve their audience, when you're going through making those difficult casting decisions. For example, on Aussie Rangers, we were encouraged to go in particular directions based on the network already knowing that they had cast particular actors on other series, and therefore it would be better if we looked, in a different direction. So that was really, really helpful. The broadcaster also has a code of practice and a charter. So you are meeting those needs of the code of practice and charter. So things like excessive drug use or excessive alcohol use, and I've got to have a bit of a smile on my face because Iggy and Ace does have an excessive consumption of alcohol, and then also other elements of drug use in the series. But you are also working to the code of practice, which means that you can't show particular things on screen. So you're still bound by a particular code. When you're working with YouTube, you have more freedoms, but then they also have a guideline. So, but those guidelines are a little bit more flexible because you are sort of more of the master of your own series. You're able to know that your niche audience is able to find your show because you've got particular elements in it, whereas, the broadcaster is commissioning your show, for example, Iggy and Ace's themes, including diversity, and then their charter is also about multicultural charter.
Fantastic. Hannah, what was your experience like in that?
Yeah, it was good. I think knowing that Iggy and Ace was being put into this initiative, we were very across what their charter was and sort of read it before we pitched the project, so we knew what they were looking for and what they wanted, and that's exactly what happened with Tribunal as well. So just making sure you know who you're pitching to and what they want is really helpful. But in terms of working with SBS, Screen Australia and Screen West for EGNACE, it was really great. I think when you're sort of emerging, it can be really intimidating to chat to like the big wigs, but they are there to support you, and they're there to support what you want to make and your vision. So throughout like the development process, they like gave us notes on scripts and cuts, and ultimately it was still up to us which way we wanted to go with it. Like, it is to guide you, and you can choose whether you sort of take or leave it, as long as you sort of validate your reasoning behind it for whatever it may be. But yeah, it was really good. I'd like to do it again.
On that, in terms of the creative process of feedback from the broadcasters and from the stakeholders, was there a point at which it caused you to question decisions you'd made, or validate decisions you'd made, or just can you talk a little bit about that creative process in terms of how the sort of give and take of feedback helped you, find the show that you found, or find some different things that you thought that you didn't realize were in there, or?
Yeah, I think just I guess with this one in particular, because we were there from like pitch, like because we were with the project so long, it's good to get someone else's perspective on it when it's a bit too close to you, like when you've read 3, 4, 5, 6 different versions of this script that you then pass on to someone who can be like, hey, maybe you should think about it this way, or same with the cuts, and same with, I guess, just sort of showing anyone. It's just that I guess the broadcaster stakeholders have a bit more experience than like my mum. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Beck, we're gonna switch over to you now to talk a little bit about Marketplace, and we'll have a look at the clip and then talk a little bit about changes you've seen in terms of Marketplace appetite, and then we've got a question from the audience that we'll take after that. So do you want to set the clip up for us a little bit, Beck? Or go off mute. There you go. So do you want to let us know what we're having a look at?
Yes, sure. This is just the trailer for Homespun. Sorry, I didn't know if I was playing it or if it was being played.
Oh, no, play it. I just wanted you to tell us.
Sorry.
Trailer
Yes.
for Homespun.
Yes, Creative Homespun.
Thank you.
What are we doing? Who are we doing?
Well, she's this really salt of the earth, natural girl, really raw. She's really unique, and that's what stood out to me. Haven't you read anything I sent you?
No, all I know is we're going somewhere that requires a fuck ton of fly spray.
Jumped up like a lion, tangles in my hair. Call me what you want, I don't care. I'm on fire, in my underwear. Doing what I want, like a millionaire. I turn it up another notch. I rock it loud and make it hot. I spike the punch and make it pop. Don't stop. Living my best life.
There are plenty of eligible young men out there.
We've actually road tested a fair few of them. We're fine. I don't do rednecks. I can think of a million places I'd rather be than this shithole town, but I'm a team player, so here I am.
We didn't come across as rednecks.
I need you to find me some people in pain. We need to find a couple of drought-stricken farmers or grieving country widows.
Country classic. Everybody loves it. Stick to the brief.
We just got brushed.
Oh. You wouldn't even piss on me if I was on fucking fire.
Fuck off home!
Fuck you!
Okay. All right, Beck, speak to us, oh great one.
I feel like I've got a bit of a foggy brain because I do have a newborn in the background, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit, I feel like this is a question, so I'm going to try and be as articulate as I can, but please forgive me if I'm not.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
You. This is a really interesting question because marketplace means a lot of different things in web, because it's not just the traditional purchase by a broadcaster or commissioned by a broadcaster, in that sense of, distributor, or if you're going direct to the broadcaster. You've also got the option of monetizing it if you're going directly to YouTube with advertising and things like that. Or we've seen in the recent year with one of our projects, there's a lot of revenue share platform happening internationally as well. So I think these conversations are really important, because one of the things about web is that for a lot of emerging people, they might not be making web with a budget that's financed by agencies or by broadcasters. It could just be that they've got a bunch of mates who are doing it through a crowdfund and they're making it differently, but they can make it still in a really amazing quality. And because broadcasters are acquiring more short form stuff, they can have it, acquired to go to air. So then the question becomes, well, what is the price that people are paying both domestically and internationally if they're actually purchasing, as is the case, which has happened with 600 bottles of wine. So when we started that, as I said, it was purchased in the UK with BBC, then back here on Channel 10, ABC iView, and last year Netflix. When we took that product to market, Netflix weren't interested in the shorter formats, and then last year that changed. So we're really seeing that this is evolving, and it's important as filmmakers that we all talk about this, because what we want to make sure that we don't do is undercut those traditional formats in terms of the value that we're, so we have to kind of have these dialogues to establish, because often if it's emerging, you're so excited to get your project onto the platform and to an audience because it's giving you the exposure and stuff. So we just have to make sure that we don't devalue the content and the, keep that sort of not cut off our nose despite our face, so that there's, and I think we're still in that era. 600 bottles of wine has been a great project because we've been able to see what is being paid for it to premiere on a platform, to then when it's come into Australia and be on multiple platforms, how the licenses are working if you're doing it in that traditional way. And then we've also made other web series where we've gone direct to the audience so that we can see what's the financial model around that. Because at the end of the day, when you're in film and TV, and this is just is the way that it is, it's quite an expensive medium because you have to pay, and everyone who's producing any kind of film and TV knows the cost to make a thing, and it's costly. So you have to have a smart model of being able to find out how you can budget your project, finance your project, and then make a return on your project if you're going to be doing this sustainably as a long-term proposition, if that's how you're going to run your business as a producer. So it's a really critical time for us to figure out what the value is with all these different ways of doing it, because it's not just one. And I'm seeing that we're in a time where, the streaming platforms, the broadcasters, they are sort of looking at this as a legitimate product, not just as a talent accelerator as well, because there's audiences that love, certain short form content, and there's people in YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, and they are so authentic to their audience that they're totally, making a mozza off their content and how they're creating stuff. And I think as content makers and filmmakers, we need to really be switched on at the moment. It's a critical time because there's never been more people creating content ever, and people are really good at it. Like, you watch people on TikTok and they're really good at editing, and same with the other platforms, all the platforms. There's a lot of, which is great because it removes the gatekeepers. So we get natural diversity a lot more than we ever have, because people can be in the middle of nowhere and broadcasting to an audience. But it also means that we need to have regular dialogue around what is the impact of that on the industry for a format as web series. And I think that's still evolving right now, if that makes sense. So it's every year there seems to be more value. Web series have gone from being the poor little cousin to being like a legitimate, having a seat at the table now. So I think that will continue to evolve because of younger audiences as well who have grown up enjoying short form from get-go. So, yeah. Hopefully that makes sense.
Total sense. Absolutely. Quick question for you. Could you give us just a ballpark figure about the budget level for Homespun?
Mm-hmm. So, that probably cost around $280K. Then other stuff sort of on top. And interestingly, every single project we've done a mixed funding model, and it's been very different. So for Homespun, I had a lot of investment from. I do a thing where I also look at where the audience, I can get a cross-pollination value from a partner I might work with if they've got a channel to the direct audience that I want to connect with. So investors in that project, and this is interesting for people who aren't looking at just that traditional sort of route of financing. I always look at my audience and see if there's an opportunity to finance from the audience. So one of our major partners for that was Telstra, which is from a discoverability point of view, that gives me a whole range of options for regional screenings. We're doing 2 major screenings in their head offices in the city because I want the city to learn from the bush from this project. And then also through all of their channels where they've got a huge distribution list because of, because it's Telstra. So I always look at that at the beginning in my strategy as well, depending on how I'm making it. But I'm kind of excited by the opportunities to make sustainable stuff that isn't relying on traditional models as well. So Homespun did get traditional support, and we're super appreciative of it from Screenwares because that was critical, and their support was amazing as well because they totally understood the innovation in it, which it was very different, probably a very different project for them, but they could see the strength in the pathway to audience, and so they were an amazing partner. And then that's been supplemented by other financial partners that are connected to the audience.
Fantastic. So speaking of audience, we've got a question from the audience. Oh, that was so cute. So the question is, how does the pitching process for a web series differ from other kinds of content like a short film or a TV series? And are there particular tricks or requirements that you are aware of or that you've experienced, or just some pitching tips you might want to share with our audience today? Oh, great and wise women of the web. And who wants to start? I'm looking at you, Hannah.
I don't think that it is too different. I think like when we first pitched Iggy and Ace, it was a 1-page document, and that had absolutely everything on it. It was like 3 paragraphs of the entire plot that we thought it was going to be, then like a little bit about the team, a little bit about pathway to audience, and that was it. And I think we got through just on the strength of the story. And then for the web series I'm working on at the moment, when we pitched it, it was like a 20-page Bible with like 1-page breakdowns of each episode and a much stronger like pathway to audience. And it just varies, I think, which doesn't help the question at all, sorry. But I think it just, it isn't too different. It just depends on your project, who you're pitching it to, and how much work you have behind it. You've done behind it already.
Anybody else? Thoughts and tips about pitching? Miley, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about this before, but I've been, in the last couple of years, I've been pitching half-hour TV series both here and in the US. And I think the big difference between when we're pitching short short film or web series is basically where you are at in your experience level. When I always try and do a really full, like, a vision treatment with, clips of what it's going to look like and what it's going to feel like. And if it's a series, acknowledging the format, like the arc of the series, what individual episodes are going to look like, how it could possibly continue into further series, whether that is a web series or a full half-hour series, you do that. I've noticed the major difference between when I've been pitching the shorter form and the longer series is just that, as a newer creator in the world of long form, I have to have a lot more backing behind me. Like, I have to go in with experienced producers, and they need to give me attachments, who I'd be working with as like a showrunner or an experienced writer on the project as well. But yeah, in terms of the content, it's just like the clarity of your vision going in, that's across the board. It's like you have to have that down on the page. So people can see what you're trying to do.
Shakara and Kelly, has pitching changed since you've been in the game? Do you feel like it's different now? You can pitch things differently because there's more familiarity with the format, or does it still feel like you need to bring in a whole story, a whole world, a whole experience to whomever you're pitching to?
I think it's still the same in terms of if you're pitching a film or if you're pitching a short content or long content. I always found the 30-second pitch or the 2-minute pitch always kind of works for me, because I think I'm a better talker than I am a writer. Which is ironic because I also do writing. Yeah. Yeah. But I think
perfect team.
Yeah, that's why we're making a great team. Yeah. No, but I think also just jumping on what the other ladies were saying is you also do need to have a really great document to back up your vision, so to speak. So it's on paper, so you know what you're trying to pitch inside and out. So if they ask you questions, you can say, well, actually, I've thought about this. This, what's your target audience? Oh, yep, I've thought about that. This is my target audience.
Because they're going to ask you.
Yeah, they're going to ask you all types of questions, and you just have to be ready for it. Yeah.
Have you ever been stumped?
All the time. No.
That's where the acting skills come in.
No, I think if you're prepared enough, especially for pitching a content, you prepare yourself for those types of questions, and I think also building a good working rapport with who you're pitching to. So with the web series that I've worked on, they've been with broadcasters, so having a good working relationship with broadcasters. But if you're just doing it cold turkey, I guess, then, like I said, the 30-second or the 2-minute pitch is always good, and then you can just kind of hand over your document. Yeah.
Melissa, is there a question that you dread or a question that you look forward to when you're pitching from whomever you're pitching to that you can think of?
I think, the questions you dread are the ones where you haven't, for example, like if you don't have a particular actor in mind and the broadcaster says, oh, who do you see in this role? And you kind of think, well, there could be 15 people who could play this role, but they want to hear the name of an actor who's going to sit in there, that works for them. And so I guess they're the types of things that you dread. But other times you've got all that lined up. You know exactly who the best actor is. And often you're working with, I am anyway, I'm working with writers who are writing with particular actors in mind. So it's quite easy to come out with those questions, answer those questions. But what I'm finding more about pitching in this COVID world is pitching on Zoom, I'm finding is particularly difficult. I much rather have a personal pitch, be in the room, And then you're able to pick up on all those gestures and the warmth or lack of warmth, and you're able to move your picture in a particular direction. When things are on Zoom, it's a whole different ball game. For me, other people might find it easier or enjoy it more. I mean, it certainly does cut out the travel time, but I think it also cuts out the warmth and really getting a feel for what the broadcaster is wanting.
So that's a fantastic point to pick up on. Does anybody have thoughts about the best ways to pitch on Zoom, or things that you feel work, don't work?
I'm the opposite. I'm an introvert, and I get so nervous. I remember, like, the first time I ever did a pitch over in the US, I thought there would be a table in front of me and I could put my pitch out there so I could glance at it, and there was nothing there. And I was shaking so much, I kept dropping my paper. I don't even know if they understood what I was saying. I did get used to it, but I've found I've got more control when I'm on Zoom. I'm in my own environment. I can calm my anxiety down. It is harder to gauge reactions, but it makes me listen and watch more and be more focused on the other person, that I find when it's over Zoom.
Amazing. Well, I suspect we'll be doing this more and more as the weeks continue. So maybe that would be a good next topic for WIFT to do, how to pitch on Zoom workshop. We've got a couple of other questions from the audience. So maybe we'll go to this one, which is, someone would like us to share where and when we can watch everybody's web series, or how can we get a chance to see everybody's web series. So shall we start with Melissa? Do you and Hannah want to mention?
Later in the year.
Later in the year. Perfect.
Watch it later in the year. Yeah.
Later in the year is good.
Yeah. And it's just, Iggy's has just been announced for Series Mania. And there should be some more announcements coming in the next few weeks, and then hopefully an announcement about the broadcast date, which is soon.
Soon. Fantastic. Soon is very good. Beck?
Yeah, we'll be the same. We'll be later in the year as well, but we'll do there's a few things that we'll be announcing the next couple of weeks, which are under embargo at the moment, but we'll announce later on. And then 600 Bottles of Wine is still available on Netflix now, and the other ones are still available on YouTube, and one of them's just moved into post-production.
Excellent. Miley, where can we see your work?
So yeah, Molly and Cara and Calling are both on SBS On Demand. Calling is, I forgot to mention, but we actually cut it in a short film version as well, which allowed us to have like dual pathways to getting the film out. So it's currently in its short film version on SBS.
Fantastic. Shakar and Kelly?
Well, Aussie Rangers was on ABC for about 3 years, and looking at probably putting it up on YouTube, but just haven't gotten around to it yet.
She went and got herself a real job.
Well, I suspect you're going to find you've got lots of audience for it again and again and again. So we'll all wait for it. All right, so let's get on to the last couple of questions. Beck, you touched a bit about monetizing and funding strategies. I guess the overall question is for everybody, which is about funding avenues. So funding avenues available, how you got your projects put together and financed, as much of that as you can talk to us about, and suggestions for people who are looking to get their projects financed, what are some of the strategies you've used previously to see things through? Huck, do you want to give that a start?
So 600 bottles of wine we did totally independently. So we crowdfunded that. And then we actually did a few really entrepreneurial things. So for the post-production, we did sort of a contra arrangement because some of the post-production companies are really interested in what's happening in the digital space and kind of aligning to projects so that they can learn as well what's going on and what works. And because the edit process has been quite different for particularly if you're doing platform agnostic stuff, which we did do with 600 bottles of wine. I made it as an 8x9 minute and then repurposed it as a 4x18. So like Miley said, I had 2 channels to audience, but I also had 2 offerings for the for broadcasters to consider. And so that was really interesting as well, seeing like what worked and what didn't. So that was a very different funding model. Like I said, and I guess it always depends like what your end game is as well, because if you're going on YouTube, you don't necessarily need to have the same contractual setup as if the chain of title for a broadcaster. So that sort of links, and I always say to people to think about their finance model based on where they want it to end up, because if you do create something that you want to be broadcast and you're not being commissioned, you still have to have the same things in place so that it's industrially, you've got the chain of title and everything like that. So 600 bottles of wine was interesting because we made it on the smell of an oily rag and didn't sort of have the right contracts in place at the time because we sort of wanted, it was in 2017, I think, or 2018, around then, can't remember. And we wanted to see how it would go. So we I like to create things like a world, like a multi-dimensional thing. So with that one, what I did is for the premiere, we made that in Redfern in Sydney, and we got a big warehouse and we bumped in the aesthetic of the show and invited all sorts of people in the audience demographic. And we had a white carpet where people could throw red wine on it to make it red when they arrived. And we fully activated the world of the audience with media and people like that. I also used the opportunity to create stills for that show before we took it to market. So my audience was like a Marie Claire Vogue sort of audience. So I set up a branded suite, did a whole strategy around that. And then Marie Claire actually ran with that collateral for their magazine because people had been in the audience at the premiere. And that then helped us in terms of linking it to pitching as well. When we went into the broadcaster, we could say, we've had this PR, and this is where our audience is because it came from a blog. So all that sort of stuff, I think, if an audience, like Melissa said, is a broadcaster is wanting to know how they can find an extension on their audiences or tap into an audience that they don't speak to that they need to. So if you can prove that you can do that with your show, that can also help you get over the line with the thing that you've created. So I come at it from that angle, I suppose. So, so in that way, what I had to do then, once we did have the UK BBC saying, yes, we want it, we then had to retrospectively contract, which is a nightmare, and I do not recommend it to anyone, every single person within that show. And that was tricky. That was a really tricky process, but it worked in the end. It was a lot of work. So there are different ways of, like, often people can fund it to a point, like to if you're not doing it commissioned with a broadcaster, often they can fund it to a point and then not have post-production, then go for completion of post-production through a screen agency, or again, like I said before, looking at different ways in the community that you might get some funding that you could get it over the line to have it finished. And there is a lot of, like, I think it's a really good idea to think big picture in terms of how you can fund and not just the traditional routes with web series, because, we need to be finding ways to make ourselves sustainable as businesses and things like that. And I think always just relying on funding from government agencies or funding from broadcasters is quite inhibiting in terms of not just ideas, but also business approaches with creating stuff. So that's why I think the web series is great, because it does allow us to experiment with those different ways of funding to make a thing. And then it's just being conscious of, if your end game is a broadcaster, you're always still going to have the contracts in place, and you're going to have to eventually have the budget to make sure that you can pay back everyone what they're required to be paid, if that is your end game and you're financing it differently, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Melissa, anything you want to add to that?
Well, it's just so refreshing, Beck, to hear you talk about looking at the independent sector, and I think that's a really good point, that you can go to alternate sources of funding. You don't have to go to the traditional methods of your state agency or Screen Australia or the network to look for funding. So that's really lovely. Just such a good reminder. And there's also the crowdfunding opportunities that you can tap into as well, and private sponsorship. And so, I mean, if you want to talk about those more traditional methods, it is nearly every state agency has some kind of online or digital fund. Screen Australia does have a digital fund, and they're often doing partnerships with networks. Aussie Rangers was a partnership, but it was a Screen West ABC partnership. And then Iggy and Ace was a SBS and Screen Australia partnership, which then Screen West came on board with later down the track. So these opportunities are amazing. Just it's the financial strategies that you can look at. You're not just having one source. You can look at 3 sources of funding, and then you've got your platform being iView or Digital Originals or wherever, YouTube or wherever. They're just fabulous. I'm friends with a filmmaker, Luke Eve, who is working with Screen Australia on a project that is Screen Australia funded, but it goes out on Facebook. So I think it doesn't, it doesn't matter if you don't need a broadcaster to be the end platform. You can look at a variety of sources, and Vimeo now as well. You can monetize Vimeo. It now has a pay-per-view service. So there's just a whole range of opportunities that you can now fund your projects. There's not just that one traditional source.
The whole world, it feels like it's not only a big world in which to put the content, it's a big world in which to invite people to help you put the content together. So things have changed a bit. Hannah, you look like you had something you were going to jump in with.
I think as well, like if you go out and you find these brands and these partners to work with who are supporting you financially or through marketing or ever what way, these like more traditional methods will tend to follow because you've gone and found that audience as well. Like the web series that I'm doing here in Sydney, it's called Me and Herpes, and it's a lesbian rom-com that's like exploring like sexual education in that space. And so we had partnered with ACON, which is like the sexual health organization here, and they hadn't come on board with like money, but they were like, we will promote it, we'll cross promote it with you, we'll do this, we'll do that. And they have quite a large reach. And then knowing that they were going to do that, we went to Screen Australia and they funded the show. And then you can try to like collect more people from there, like different brands. You're like, oh, it's a Screen Australia and ACON funded project, and more people. It snowballs a little bit. Once one person commits to you, others are sort of willing to do so.
And so when you're going to a company like that, say ACON or a Beck, you had mentioned Telstra before, is that different than pitching it to a traditional broadcaster or a traditional screen agency funder? Do you approach the pitch in a different way? So how do you go about bringing those partnerships to fruition?
I think you want to talk about well, I guess in the instance of me and herpes, why it's important and what you can get out of each other by doing it together, I think is a little bit of how you spin it as well. It's like, we will promote you and your resources, you promote our show and our work, and then that's how, that's how we've sort of gone about it. And same with other brands who are like donating product. It's like you will see your product on screen, etc. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think the private sector is having the same like scratch your head moment as content makers in terms of how do they find an audience? Like the noise is across the board. So one of the things that we're really big on is that if we're doing a partnership with someone, that there's no editorial, like they've got no influence over the editorial. And what's happened is private business seems to have skipped ahead to realizing that the old branded sponsorship model doesn't work with the audience nowadays, because the audience is really literate, because people are watching more content than they've ever watched before. So that discussion about authenticity comes back into play, because you can't pull the wool over the eyes of the audience anymore. Like they're watching and they're following a platform or a person or a show because they genuinely get it, they love it, it's their world. So you can't just cut something in there and be like, ha ha ha, we got money from this person, so psych out. You have to actually, like, it has to be genuine. Like Hannah said, like the alignment has to be a complete, like it should work within the world, and then what you're actually what you're providing and what you should be pitching that you're providing is an added value to their audience, or an extension for them to be able to connect with their audience through what it is that you're creating. So we're in this really exciting time, because those brands get that. Like they're sort of like ahead of the curve. And when you look at what's happening in the industry, in terms of discoverability, like before it was like everyone used to say content is king, and I would always say, yeah, but distribution is queen. Like you have to think now about how you're going to get the thing to the audience, particularly if you're paying for something to be made. I mean, agencies are thinking about this, broadcasters are thinking about this. It's the days are gone where you could just have an idea and be like, this is my idea, let's make it, because it's costly and you have to find the audience. So brands are thinking about this because they're thinking about it in their world of going, how can I connect to my end game consumer? So the smart thing as a producer, particularly emerging, is this wealth of opportunity to go, who's in the world, like what company or brand might be aligned to the world that I'm creating that's very specific. And then if you can go and have like a smart chat with them about this is the world, and be super specific about the world of the thing, you know, like I think when you look at 600 bottles, the whole world that we've created, like even the brand that we created, we used a wine glass to do the logo where we had red wine on the bottom. Like every detail, we've been so vigilant with how that world would be suitable for that audience. And if you can talk to a company and explain that that's this, you know, and pitch to them confidently where they sit in that world as well, you can get them over the line through that way, because it, like I said before, it's a cross-pollination of audience, which is great because then they're not trying to. The great thing about that, and it's really empowering as a creative, is that they're not there sitting then going, okay, we want to have a say about the story and we want this character to do that, because they know that you know what you're doing. Yeah. So they can hand over the money and hand over the alignment, knowing that you're creating something for a world that you know. So I find it really empowering and freeing, because then you can also get it to the audience, but they recognise that the editorial is best when it's authentic and there's not that sense of interference going on with the actual content that you're creating.
Fantastic. Well, we have actually used up all our time. But what I'd like to do really quickly is have each of you just tell us, maybe 30 seconds or less if possible, what you're working on, you know, so what can we see from you coming up, if there's something you want us to watch out for. And we'll start with you, Melissa, because you're online.
Oh, we'll definitely watch out for Iggy and Ace.
Absolutely.
It'll be on SBS Digital Originals. So very soon is what I should say, because we can't announce the actual date yet, but very, very soon.
Fantastic. Hannah, over to you.
Yeah, Iggy and Ace is coming out very soon. Look out for that one. And I am at like different stages with different projects, but Me and Herpes will come out, I think, probably beginning of next year on YouTube. And I've got a short film with Screen West called Bird Drone that will be taken off sometime next year as well.
Literally. Thank you. Beck?
Homespun will be coming out this year, and then the 5-minute call will hopefully come out at the end of this year or early next year. And that's just about the life of the people in the theatre, so before and after the show.
Fantastic. Kelly and Shakara, what's going on over there?
I'm currently in development mostly at the moment with a couple of projects. Doing one with a bunch of other Indigenous Western Australian female filmmakers called Red. It's a portmanteau kind of story. 8 stories in one. It's going to be a feature by the end. So that's all happening. And the writing side of things, hopefully directing side of things next year. And doing an augmented reality app for your phone on Fanny Bolbuck, who was a Wajak woman who was here in the city of Perth when it was being colonised by the British, basically British people. Yeah. So that'll be very, 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 very interesting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to plug Noongar Footy Magic, so that's up on YouTube. It's been up there for a while, and also on the AFL app if you guys ever want to check that out. And I'm just always in development for different projects.
Yeah. I'm going to get her to write something with me. So
yeah.
That's excellent.
Talking about after this.
Yeah. Fantastic. Miley, we'll finish up with you. And in addition to what you're working on personally, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what's going on with WIFT.
So I'm currently writing some episodes on the 2nd season of 100% Wolf, the ABC animated series, which is really fun. And I've got a couple of half-hour projects that I'm developing with producers, so hopefully we'll go out to pitch soon. And we have, as part of WIFT, we've got an amazing writers retreat coming up, writing retreat rather, I should say, coming up, that Cinefest Oz have come on board as amazing partners, and we're going to give the opportunity for 8 practitioners, so you don't even have to be a writer, you could be an actor or a producer, if any of you guys are interested, to come along. And there's an incredible house that Cinefest Oz have provided for us down in the Yelling Up Dunsborough area, where we're just going to hang out and write for 5 days and do lots of cool women's circle stuff, maybe, I don't know. And then you can, the attendees will get to go to the industry program at Cinefest. So it's going to be it's going to be a really special time.
That sounds fantastic. And that's something that applications
get. Yeah, so if you go to the WIFT WA website, you can apply there. You do need to be a member, but there's so many other cool benefits of being a WIFT member. It's worth dropping up anyway. So, yeah.
These kind of events. Well, that's the end of today's conversation. Thank you, all of you, so much for such a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your experiences and your knowledge and your creative joy with us. It's just been a real treat. My name is Barbara Connell. I'm the Drama Development Manager for Screen West. I thank you so much for being with us today.